pen made mightier without roid.
Welcome back to Pen Made Mightier. We are talking about vampires, but not in the traditional sense, because you know that, you saw the link, you clicked it, you know we're not talking. Let's keep going. Today we're going to talk about why are all vampires so damn skinny? It may seem obvious to you. If you're going to have an immortal character who's going to look the same forever, you want to make them attractive, and you want to make them somebody that lures people in, but I mean, come on. Every vampire I've seen for my entire life has been either a terrifying monstrosity a la Nosferatu, or they've been charming, smug, and gorgeous a la Interview with a Vampire. Or Twilight if you're too young to know what Anne Rice is. Even in comic books like I, Vampire, the Blade series, True Blood, and Twilight, you get characters who are absolutely gorgeous. And for some reason, the guy characters are always like strong-jawed and pale skin with black hair. I mean, I guess that makes sense. But I've never seen a red-haired dude vampire in one of these stories, for some reason. The contrast, pretty much every female vampire is some sexy seductress, and they almost all have red hair. Yeah, right, Carmilla? Right, Blood Rain? It's almost unavoidable. For once, I guess I'd just like to see them buck the norm a little bit more here. So, why not make these characters obese? I mean, think about it. If you're obese, for a vampire, it's pretty much pure win. Maybe that requires a little bit more explanation. Alright, so, despite the fact that we've had 30 years of media depicting vampires as basically sexy undead X-Men, vampires are still pretty consistently villains. And villains, especially in American media, are still the characters most likely to be allowed to be ugly, to be deformed, to be scarred up, to be imperfect, and to be fat. To be fat in media is, to a degree, to be allowed to be bumbling, or a failure, or to be greedy, or to be worse than your skinny counterparts. And yet vampires are still all hot. The only real example I can think of fat vampires, at least, in practical sense, would be Blade. And they just made him Jabba the Hutt-esque, and so fat they couldn't get clothes made for themselves, and you just burn them to death with a UV light, sort of like a slug with salt. And that's just all wrong. I'm telling you, being obese as a vampire is a strength. Let's break it down piece by piece. You'll see the light. Or maybe you won't. And yeah, I hear you out there. Go ahead, stop typing in the comments. Oh, look at the fat guy who just wants to be a vampire. First off, I don't want to be a damn vampire. Vampires kind of blow, unless we're playing Magic, because Soren's pretty cool. Look, even Soren's hot. My point is, there are better things to be if you're going to be a creature of the night than a damn vampire. You can be a zombie lord any day of the week, but a vampire? Yeah, you can keep your Twilight. So let's talk about all the downsides of being a vampire, or at least the main ones. I'm not going to talk about playing 52 pickup when someone throws a deck of cards at you and garlic and stuff like that. Come on. But the main ones. First off, let's talk about the sun. Now, when a vampire sees the sun, it's all over. Modern vampires get around this a little bit in things like True Blood and the Vampire Hunter D and Blade by saying that these vampires mostly just sort of catch fire and they can avoid it if they're fast enough. But if you're fat takes longer to burn. It basically burns like candle wax. So the more weight you have on your body, the longer it takes you to burn to death. Sure, it makes it a little bit harder to hide behind a light pole, but come on, you're a vampire, you're super fast, just deal with it. Next, stake through the heart and decapitation. Let's handle both in one fell swoop. Basically, if you've got a skinny boy band body like Edward Cullen here, it's not so hard to drive a stake through your flimsy-ass rib cage, or to lop off your matchstick neck. But the more weight you've got on you basically acts like battle armor. More weight you have on your body, the harder it is to penetrate, the more flesh they have to cut through before they accomplish their goal. Basically gives them a form of damage resistance that skinny vampires just don't have. Fat could even help protect them from bullets if these are the kind of vampires who have to deal with daylight bullets and silver bullets damaging them, guess what? It's harder to hit the vitals for a fat person. The fat tends to make the bullets curve off in weird ways. It tends to get lodged in the fat. The point is, it's getting lodged in stuff that could be hacked off if necessary. But otherwise, it kind of acts as, I don't know, a meat shield. Basically, they've got more mass. The more mass means it's harder for your bane, your silver, your holy water, your sunlight, your steak, to chew into them, and thereby harder to deliver a killing blow. The fat acts as a natural buffer. Now, let's talk about the downsides of being fat, at least a fat human. First off, you weigh more. What's that? Vampires have super strength. Pretty much every incarnation of vampires now can flip cars, or at the very least, shrug off some pretty heavy pounding stuff. To them, 80, 100, 150 extra pounds is basically nothing. We see this when people like Edward Cullen can one-arm carry girls leaping Naruto style through the woods, or when characters like Blade can shrug off blows from people like the Hulk. I mean, we are talking vampires can deal with the fact that they've got some extra pounds on them. Period. Diabetes, heart disease, basically all of the physical strains that are put on your body from having the extra weight. Guess what? Your body's already dead. It doesn't matter if you get diabetes, because your heart does not beat ease. Fun. Award-winning. Ever say, yeah, I'm just still fat? Yeah, okay, so being a downside of being fat, you're a little less attractive, for sure. But we're talking about a race that is constantly, in every piece of media they show us, fighting to avoid detection. Inevitably noticed for their glorious beauty by some attractive so-and-so that ends up leading to their destruction. Basically, being more like the human populace around you helps you blend in. It helps you avoid detection. And at the very least, it keeps the prying eyes off of you. You think you're going to get a stalker that somehow notices that you sparkle in the moonlight, Cullen? No. You got some extra pounds on you and you're in high school, you're going to go up to the track star. And suddenly, you can choose to live in the 7th grade for the rest of your natural life instead of being homeschooled. What is wrong with these guys? Plus, I mean, if you really just gotta have somebody to drink their blood, you gotta glamour. Just glamour somebody into giving you their blood. Whatever. Big deal. And lastly, this is a little bit more on the obscure side, but it is one of my favorite vampiric weaknesses, so I still wanted to touch on it. Feral degeneration. Now this is when you see a character who has gone without blood for too long. They start to flip into a kind of bestial state, or at the very least a hollowed out form, where all they can do is sit around craving blood and can't actually function as a higher strength vampire normally would. Now, if we're assuming, like in Blade, that your weight still works sort of based on how much blood you consume, having more weight would mean that you would last longer, basically meaning that you could avoid humanity through some pretty extreme times because you've got weight, and that weight could basically net you a few extra months out in the wild. Yeah, so, what do you know? Look at that. The vampire strengths completely blow away all of the problems with being fat that humans suffer through, and the strengths of being fat add something new to being a vampire. Together, the two are flawless. So, I think a lot of stories could be improved by just adding some obesity to their vampires. I mean, sure, it might be a bit jarring at first, but when you hear the pros and cons, doesn't it sound like something interesting at least? And you think about True Blood, and we're talking about a show set in the American South, where several of the characters work at or are frequently at some sleazy fast food diner, and somehow they still all look like Gap employees. The hell is going on? How are they all munching down that much Louisiana butter and still maintaining a model athlete figure? I don't get it. That aside, I mean, despite the fact that, yeah, it would definitely be more true to life and would definitely endear you to a certain portion of the population that likes to see realistic characters, or people who are looking for fat people who are more than just Snidely Whiplash villains and shitty kids who can't stop eating constantly that ruin all of your favorite media. It would add a layer of depth and complexity to a character. Think about the little girl in Interview with the Vampire, the one who bemoans the fact that she was turned as a child and therefore has to live eternally as a child. If you have to live eternal and you can never get rid of your muffin top, it's going to be a little upsetting. It adds a little bit of humanness. In fact, you could do a really clever bit of throwaway dialogue where they could say, at least I can't see my reflection in the mirror anymore, and then they kind of poke at their pudge and it would be kind of sweet and cute and you'd feel kind of bad for them just a little bit. It's an interesting moment that you wouldn't get to see from characters that are physically perfect. So basically, it adds a level of humanity. It could add humanity to characters that are removed from the human struggle. Imagine if some of the characters in Twilight had actually had to deal with some of the problems that teenagers have to deal with. Some of these characters are eternal teenagers, or at least eternal young adults, but none of them struggle from any of the problems that plague actual teenagers and young adults. This could be a problem, feasibly, that vampires don't have an answer for, that could allow them to be a bit more human. Sure, I mean, it makes them a little less gorgeous, might ruin your fantasy to have to deal with characters that are a little bit on the chunkier side. Sure, you can make that argument. Personally, I'll take real people over perfect Gap models any day of the week. If you're writing a character, consider them from all angles. Even though it might not fit your aesthetical preferences, consider what might be best for your character. At the very least, what might make them more interesting. Because the more depth you can add to the character, or even the less conventional tropes that you can add to a character, the stronger your character will be, the more endearing your character will be, the more realistic your character will be. And at the very least, you'll give people something that they can really gravitate towards. Give them an experience they haven't already had. So thanks for sticking with us on Pen Made Mightier this week. I hope that you enjoyed this little bit of discussion. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. If you're going down there to say, I want to suck your blood or something, sure, you can do that too. Just leave the fat jokes at the door, okay? We'll see you next week. Bye now.
Pen made mightier without royalty.